Tare, sitting in for Sharon, and of course, excited once again to be doing the part 2 of what we began. We left it off at a very amazing point, and maybe for those who are just looking at us right now and you're like, okay, nikina nani wanaongelea part 2 na mimi hata sijui part 1 iko wapi, just go on YouTube. You're going to get the part 1 of this particular interview, and then you can come back or just save it or listen to this and then you'll connect it. You know, the brain can also do its thing. You can as well connect it. But this is the one interview that I believe is going to transform your life and also help you to see life from a different perspective. And not just life, but also even God from a whole different perspective, his sovereignty, because that's exactly what we were talking about off air. But welcome once again. So just a brief introduction for those who are maybe watching you for the first time.
Thank you, Beatrice. My name is Athanas Mbele.
Yeah.
I am a banker, an entrepreneur, a farmer, and a philanthropist.
Yeah.
More importantly, I am a father and a husband of one wife. And also, I'm born again. Yeah, and an author of The Perfect Storm. Yeah.
Wow, beautiful. And we closed off last week's interview with talking about the story of Jesus sleeping in the middle of a storm. Maybe we can do a recap of that and how it relates to your life.
Yeah. I think the story of Jesus first inviting the disciples into the storm, into a journey, shows that, number one, the journey of facing storms is for those who have been invited to walk with Jesus.
Wow.
So when you walk with Jesus, doesn't mean that you are immune to storms of life. So Jesus has set to sail to the other side of the Sea of Galilee. So they had a mission and a destination, just like anybody in life. But little did they know, towards the journey to the other side, there are storms.
Yeah.
So storms may not come to you. If you don't have storms in life, then it means you are not in any journey. You are not sailing.
That's true.
And it might also mean you're not actually in the journey with Jesus. Because he invites us to a journey of what his life demonstrated. Crucifixion, betrayal, pain. Jesus wept to a point that the tears were seen as blood. In fact, it was so tough that it reached a point that he said, if this cup can be taken away from me, then it's better. So that journey of storm is a realization I got after the kidney failure. And I think my story of losing the kidney was part of the grand, large story of sailing towards a destination. And I mean, the storms are for the lucky ones, the ones that have been invited by God to sail together with. But then Jesus asks a very important point when they said, who is this that has calmed the storm? Meaning, number one, the storms make you realize who you are with.
Yeah.
But he asks them, where is your faith? A very important tool that you need to face off the journey. Faith is a tool that is used by both Christians and non-Christians. So, but as Christians, we've been used to praying off the storms.
Yeah.
Rebuking God. And sometimes it's even funny that sometimes we actually blame the devil for the storms sometimes. And if you look at Isaiah, there is a part that says that God himself brings challenges in our lives at times. I know there's also the devil seeking permission in the case of Job. But I also believe that in the crucible of God forming you, then he has to pass you through some of these storms. So mine came as I was ushered into a dialysis session. And you know, I was telling you that And I saw the machine, which looks like an ATM machine, the size of an ATM machine. And I was pierced just below the collarbone and inserted some pipes that are the size of a biro pen, right through the heart to the artery, where the blood will now be taken out to the machine and cleaned up and then returned back for 4 hours. And at that time, the body responds as if you have gotten an accident. You know, the body doesn't know you're in dialysis. So when the blood is removed like that, the heart is beating so fast. And there are people who would... I remember there's a time I just collapsed on the floor. And all those pipes went out and I was losing a lot of blood and it became an emergency. But all through those 4 hours, the machine will only clean 20% of what your kidney would do. And you'd pay 14,000. And you'll do those sessions 3 times. And remember, I've just gotten a new job. So I am afraid of telling my boss that I'm doing dialysis. So I told him, I have a challenge, but I'll overcome. I was afraid of losing the job, like others in dialysis have done. But then, throughout the 4 hours, I developed a mechanism of keeping my mind sane from being swallowed up by the disease.
Yeah.
And by the time I got this news that my kidneys have failed, there's a friend of mine, a doctor, who played a very important part. He took me to the cancer center. And I can never forget this. I've even written it in my book. Then he gives me a tour in the cancer center. And then I remember asking him, why are the windows not having the curtains? Why are they made this way? He was giving me so much stories that sometimes these patients would want to jump out. And he told me, Mbele, I've brought you here not for you to compare one disease to another, but to know that cancer is not the most deadly disease. People die first in their mind. So you have to protect your mind from getting sick.
Wow.
And even when Steve Jobs was giving a speech in Stanford, and he gave us a famous quote saying that where he said that he understands now the value of being alive by being threatened with death because he was diagnosed with cancer. And he says that it's the most important thing that happened in his life to make sure that he stays focused. And I also put a quote there saying that I realized the value of a single day by being threatened of not having another.
Powerful.
Because at that time when I was in the dialysis machine, I asked myself, what if God was charging us for the kidneys that are I was doing 3 sessions in a week, being forced to eat food that is tasteless, no salt, no milk, no potatoes, no meat. So my favorite food was just ugali and cabbage, boiled cabbage without salt.
Whoa.
You are forced to have a discipline of waking up early in the morning and queue for a dialysis machine. Your body starts craving for it because the toxics fill the body and you want the machine to wipe out your blood so fast and feel better.
Yeah.
You can't stand properly. Most of the guys in that place were in wheelchairs. You're basically a dead person being supported by a machine. And that machine is only doing 20% of the work that the kidney is doing. But the realization that most of these organs that I mentioned are either made in pairs by God, or you can live without, or they can be replicated. Like, for example, the liver, if it's destroyed and I do a transplant, I give you a piece of my liver and it grows to the full size within 21 days. That's God's plan of the body, the human body. And that brought me to the realization of the architectural mind of creation of God. Because even when I was now moving into transplant, the doctors would show me how my blood vessels have been made, which blood vessel they will tap and put a kidney. And as much as doctors are doing their job, you'd realize that there's somebody else who intricately crafted the human body. In fact, I even realized that the human body was made to survive the worst accident. That once you get an accident, God forbid, the coding that God has put in your body to just withhold crisis. And when a human body succumbs to death, it has tried.
It has done its best.
It has done its best because God has created, including some things called bypass of blood vessels.
Wow.
where if your leg is amputated, their blood vessels know how they will reconnect back to the heart. So all those things were lessons I was learning during dialysis and 4 hours of studying deep through the word. And of course, a lot of trauma. People spreading rumor that this guy is now done, is dead. Relatives turning against you, friends turning against you. And it's as much as you're being tested, they're also being tested.
Yeah.
The friendships are being stretched.
That's true.
For you to know. And sometimes you're totally isolated. And understanding that God isolates you so that you fully depend on him.
Yeah.
But more importantly, at that time, what made me survive that was that trip to the cancer center, being told to keep my mind healthy. Started studying about so many people, the Nelson Mandelas that we celebrate. He was imprisoned for 27 years. And yet we celebrate him as a hero. But during that 27 years, if you are to imagine being put in an island without food, there was a time that he was so sick. Made him to who he is. Because when he came out, his first act as president was to forgive all those who persecuted him for 27 years. And so many other people, even the Michael Jordans, have failed several times. In fact, he was called a famous failure. He failed so many times until he learned how to do the shot the right way. And he became one of the most famous and the greatest basketball player.
Yeah.
So that failure part, we fail to see it. And really has to do with the mental strength that one has. In fact, there's one person who is called Steve Hawkins, who got disability, and I've talked about his story in my book. And at the age of 22 years, he gets ALS that cripples his body. ALS is where the body is fighting its own immune system. So you lose mobility, you lose your brain proper functions, the organs fail. But he kept his mind sane. And there's a quote that he says that you can't be disabled in your body and be disabled in your mind at the same time. He says that you have to keep your mind from getting disabled.
Yeah.
So at that time, I was eating food in my mind, and the food of mind is reading the right books, listening to the right people, blocking the people you need to, avoid Googling some things that probably were not the right food.
Yeah.
Because I would Google and see that kidney failure is a path to death. You talk to somebody and they'll give you a story of how many people who have died from your disease. They will tell me, your grandfather died from the disease, the people created theories of what happened to me. Doctors, I'd go to doctors, they'll give you a theory of what happened. A young man at 27, he has a kidney failure. There are those who will say it's witchcraft. I reached a point I wanted healing so fast. So I started moving to churches looking for healing miracles. So I'd get a call from friends, some genuine, some not. He'll tell you, there's this preacher, when he prays for you, you'll get a new kidney. And I've talked about my faith encounter, the journey, and the desperation to get a solution would drive you to do crazy things. You drink the waters that are supposed to do, you will sweep with the brooms that are needed just to ensure that you get well. And as a man looking at my wife going through all that, and a young family, about to lose the breadwinner, was making me more desperate for solutions. But one thing that I said I will not do is to look for alternatives outside God. There was pressure, of course, from everybody in the family.
Yes.
They will tell you, this an old man in Tanzania, if you go, they will sort your problem out. But one thing I told God is that I'd rather die in Christ. I'd rather die in Christ, but let me see how the power of Christ is. It's not that I was testing God. I just wanted to see whether if I stick to the godly way, I'll be a failure. I'll have a failed story. And I've entailed the whole journey there. But that, now I started, after desperately looking for healing in everywhere, I started looking for a kidney donor. I got a few people that I thought were close to me, and you'll ask them, and they will tell you, no, my kidney.
tricky, sir.
You'll tell them, you don't need the 2 kidneys. You just need one.
Oh, my God.
That's when I understood the saying that says, why are you looking at me as if I'm asking you for a kidney?
You are literally living in it.
Yeah,
looking at people like,
I'm looking at the financial part of it.
Yeah.
I did the approximations. I needed around 4 million shillings.
Oof.
So either get a kidney donor or succumb to dialysis all the time. And the dialysis just is you're not eating nutritious foods. So you have no nutrition. Your body is weak.
Yeah.
And then we were losing a few patients. Maybe they have underlying diseases. So you'll ask, where was my neighbor in the dialysis machine? And they will tell you, we buried her last weekend. So you're asking, am I next?
Okay. Well.
And then people are refusing to donate. When you're okay and you had the money, you thought everybody loves you, but the true love is tested at that time. And just to understand God's doing, my mom says, my biological mom says, if the doctors allow with my age, I'm always ready to give you a kidney.
Wow. Your mom now, the
Yes.
biological mom.
My biological mom.
Wow.
And that was the ultimate show of love,
Yeah. Oof.
First, as much as I didn't grow up with her,
Yeah.
but she was used, she selflessly gave part of her body to give me another second chance in life. So as I'm talking here, I'm carrying her kidney.
Oh, wow. I mean,
So she gave sacrifice twice. Carried me for 9 months. That's a lot of sacrifice. And then now she gives you a kidney again.
Kidney.
A mom that had grown to know that she doesn't love me.
The people were saying that.
Yeah, and it brought me to realization that the love of a mother to a child or a debt to a mother to a child cannot be repaid. You cannot never say that will repay your mother anything. Of course, we were in talking terms, love was there, but I still doubted whether the love was 100%. But the act that she did first humbled me and brought me to a realization that I really need to ask for forgiveness.
Now it's the other way around.
For every thought I ever had and thought against her. And really, it's easy to judge women and mothers.
Very easy.
You wouldn't know her personal storm that she went through when she had me at that time.
Yeah.
And now she gets another storm that she's about to lose me, and she offers to save the child. So we go through the process of looking for the matching tests and booking for where the transplant will be done. And my friends come and say, Mbele, people come together and raise money for wedding, for schools, and sometimes even birthday. But now you have a problem, and as friends, we want to raise money. And so they raised half the budget that was needed for the transplant. And I'm very grateful for what they did. But then during that season, we had also a personal fight at home. We were looking for another child. Because I was thinking that, I have very little time left to live. So I need to leave an offspring. I can't live. I need to sire more kids. But the doctors wouldn't tell me that it's hard to get a child when you're in dialysis.
Oh my.
So we could try. My wife would, as I'm busy struggling with the kidney, she's busy trying to see the fertility options available to get a baby.
Yeah.
And we didn't know who the problem was, me or her. I thought it was her. And so I think the doctors didn't want to discourage me further.
Yeah.
So we kept trying. And of course, one thing I never succumbed to is to ensure that I hide my scars in my suit and always button up and go back to work after dialysis. So I'll do dialysis at 3 in the morning, wake up as I had been promoted to the head of SME, in charge of the SME department in our branches. And I'd still go to work, but I had very supportive workmates. Because if I was working for a bad organization, I would have been fired. But they held me. They were the biggest contributors to my cost of transplant. And I had a lot of moral support.
Yeah.
But the biggest one was from my wife, who, even when she cried, she made sure that I never saw it. Wow. And so we go through the transplant process. And in March 2023, date 2, I am ushered into Nairobi Hospital theater for 8 hours. The doctors are stitching together vein after vein. And now when they put together the kidney, I was actually told that they leave the rest to God. When they close up the kidney is put just right in the stomach.
Yeah.
Just at the intestines. So they tap a blood vessel, put the kidney. But then when they close, they never open up to check. It's like when you take a seed and you bury it on the soil. You can't keep digging it and checking whether it's growing. So that's what they do. So they leave the rest, the wounds inside and everything, to God. But there's a prayer that I made and told God that if you give me just one day to live. There's a time I was writing my will to just the little things that were left. I called a friend of mine called Sam, told him, there are a few things I had invested on. So I think I've reached the end.
Why?
With all the faith I had, the proclamation, but I reached a place where, like, just like Jesus, where he felt this cup is too much and I'm leaving. But I told God, if you give me a chance to live again, I will live a more quality life. Not the length of it, but the quality of it. And I was brought to the verse in Luke, in Luke, that speaks about love. There's a verse that talks about, there's a centurion, a very well-versed person who asks Jesus, what will they do to get to heaven? Think Luke 16.
Yeah.
And he says that love God, your Lord, from all your heart, and love your neighbor as you love yourself. And that guy realizes that I love God, but now I also love my neighbor. So he asks Jesus, who is the neighbor? He just wants to know. And then Jesus gives the story of a Samaritan. He says that there's a guy who was passing by and he met a Samaritan who is a stranger, and he wants to know, he wants to demonstrate, Jesus, through that parable, wants to demonstrate that the Samaritan had all reasons not to help. But he demonstrated love.
Yeah.
And then he says, go and do that. Meaning, after you love God, the next thing is to love his creation.
Yeah.
And a pure love that comes from the heart.
Yeah.
And how better to do it than to go back to Matthew 25, where he says, when the Son of Man rises with the angels and is seated in the throne, he tells the believers, he separates sheep and the goats.
Yeah.
And the sheep go to the right. And then he turns to the ones that are in the right. And he tells them that when I was hungry, you fed me. When I was naked, you clothed me. When I was a stranger, you welcomed me. Come and inherit my kingdom. And they ask, when did we do this, Jesus? And you know, those are believers, eh?
Yeah.
And he tells them, when you did it to the least in my kingdom, you actually did it to me. So at that time, I realized the importance and the demonstration of love throughout Jesus' life and his parables. All of them demonstrate great love. So I decided to start a foundation now.
Yeah.
Just at the time when I was almost being ushered to the theater. So when I was being ushered to the theater, I registered a foundation, Athanas Mbele Foundation. I had some little money. Then I bought tents for my village. I said, if there will be funerals and everything, let them be using these tents and chairs for free.
Yeah.
And one of my friends asked me, why are you doing it? And if you don't wake up? I knew if they don't wake up, at least this will be left. You know, I had money, cars, and all that. They are gone. But what will be left is the love that you give to the people. So I asked God that to give me time, and so that I live a quality life, not to earn,
Yeah.
but for lack of a better word, to earn my next day with how I live today.
Wow, that's really powerful. I'm being told we need to go on a break. I mean, it's 30 minutes.